Authors Over 50, Writing in Life's Sweetest Third. Authors Over 50's weekly podcast celebrates writers and their journeys to publication. Writing after 50 is a whole story on its own, so let's skip to life's sweetest third and talk with authors about their journey from pen to publish. Welcome, I'm Julia Daly, your host, and I invite you to listen to interviews with writers who've achieved their goal of publishing a book just later in life. We've seen award lists for under 30 or under 40, but I've yet to see lists for those who've achieved a significant milestone of their own, launching a new career and publishing their first book after the age of 50. We will hear about these authors' inspirations, struggles, strategies, and the smell of that first book. These writers' journeys inspire me because I'm one of them. My guest today is an international author, former member of the military, and world traveler. He writes science fiction, action adventure, and historical fiction. Welcome to Authors Over 50, J.W. Orchard.
Thank you, and thank you very much for having me.
Our opening question on Authors Over 50 is always, so what took you so long to write your first book?
Life. Actually, I was in the military and retiring, and I had done 27 years. I obviously, after 9/11, I was with the National Guard, deployed on and off. And what had happened was my career was coming to an end. I wasn't quite sure why I was feeling the way I did, and went to counseling. And of course, the counselor said to me, well, write it down. So I did. And it actually ended up being this autobiography, so to speak. And it felt really well. And so I published it. I didn't have any ideas of becoming a writer until I did it and began to enjoy it.
Well, I've heard a lot of writers say that writing is their therapy. So I guess that's really good for you to have done that. Once you wrote that first book, how did you proceed? Did you search for an agent, decide to choose a hybrid, a small press, or did you self-publish?
I self-published, and actually how it started was there was he's a friend of mine, kind of an arm's distance, but he had published, and I said, okay, well, what do you do? And he suggested, well, he self-publishes. And I said, okay, well, who do you publish with? And he said, Lulu. And I was like, okay, that's great. Expecting to have another follow-on meeting. I still have waiting to hear from him some 5 years later, but I went on and figured it out and published. And of course, when I finished, kind of closed my eyes, hit the send publish button, and it worked out. So yeah, and then subsequently from there, I have moved on to Amazon for various reasons. Amazon actually is a little bit more user-friendly.
Well, they're the elephant in the room for sure. So that's really interesting to me. How did you handle the learning curve for Amazon when you were learning to publish there?
Oh, wow. Look, and please understand, I am not shilling for Amazon, but their interface is fairly user-friendly. They have templates, and they have every possible language you can think of, and they have different sizes. I publish 6x9, that's mine, and it has it's already formatted. It's very if you have no idea what form to use or whatever, they have it. And they walk you step by step through. So you create your manuscript, and then you upload it, and they come back to you and say, okay, needs this change, or it's fine, or whatever. And then they have book covers, and they have, it's just set up, and they walk you through about, okay, here's your royalties, here guys, how this works. It works for me, having a warehouse full of books. I'd love to if I had enough people coming by and getting them, but it is published on demand. They also have Kindle right? So you can create ebooks at the same time. You can create your book, your hardcover book, and you can create your ebook all at the same time. So it does make it very convenient for the author. The other thing that I was really surprised is that their customer service, they prefer that if you have a question to call them, and they will call you back. And this is a huge company, and they're very, very helpful, very helpful. So that's, like I said, I'm not shilling for Amazon, but they were very, very helpful in this, and they have a number of just different things on their site to help you market, and there's a lot of things that I'm still working on, but there are they do have different avenues available.
Well, that's huge. I mean, customer service is huge if you can get a live person on the telephone, especially from a company like the size of Amazon. That's good in itself right there.
It's like I said, it definitely. I was surprised when they called me because they're like, "We prefer you call, put in your number," and 20 minutes later, they're on the phone, and I was on the phone with them for like an hour. And they're like, okay, here's this, because I couldn't understand like why one of my books wasn't showing up. And they're like, well, it was we're not sure if it's a return or not. Whatever. Like, fine, just let's get that settled. But it worked. It worked out really well. So
Do you create your own covers on Amazon or do you have a graphic artist?
I create. Very good question again. Yes, you can. I have used Amazon. Usually, what I do is I go to ThinkStock because I'm looking for a certain, because your cover grabs people's attention. It should reflect, well, this is what I've learned over the learning curve. It should reflect what's in your book. For example, this is Firefight, right? This is my first book. Of course, it's 42 pages, but yeah, that's gives you some idea what it's about. So what you can do is go on ThinkStock and find the picture you're looking for that gives the accent, download it, and then you can use that in the process of creating the cover. And then they have a certain slant style. Let me see if I can give you some idea. Okay, so this is okay. So this is the series Out of Purgatory. Okay, so they allow you to take the picture, they wrap it around. Okay,
Nice. Yeah.
and you can put in, and this is of course their slant to how it looks, and then it allows you to put in,
Mm-hmm.
information, your bio, picture, so on and so forth. Now this picture, of course, is I climbed Mount Sinai, and that is a picture at the 3,000 steps, and I just thought it was appropriate for the series. And there's like I said, or you can just go with no picture, and they have some standard stock photos that you can use also that are royalty free.
So do you use that slant kind of as your brand on your books?
I'm starting to. It's it works out. The funny thing is, my last book, or my latest book, I should say, that I published, this is the second part of the Oceans of Fire series, is I let my students. I said, okay, what do you think? Right? They're of course all excited. Okay, we like that one. Okay, we'll go with that. So they are eye catching. I mean, it does allow you the freedom to do it. And the great thing is, if you mess it up, right, you're like, okay, well, that didn't quite work out. You just go back to the beginning, and okay. And they also have a review process. So once you put everything together, Amazon reviews it. And if everything is fine, they'll let you know in 24 hours, hey, we're going to go ahead and let you go live. And it automatically goes live. But they just check, you know, uh, you put down your category, is there, language or whatever. What's it about? They do a quick review. Um, and they let you know. I haven't anything rejected yet, but it's just part of their process. So there is some vetting on their part, and that's kind of when you go in to talk about marketing. What genre are you using? Right? Are you using a subgenre? Right? And it just depends. It's just where you go, because You're going to get to put in keywords for searches, and so there's part of that.
Well, speaking of publicity, have you found anything that works for you or that maybe doesn't work?
Marketing is probably one of those things that I'm beginning to work on. I have this. The problem is I write stories. I'm not a marketer, uh, but I have to be because I'm a small business. So there's at first. I mean, I've been downloaded in every on every continent except Antarctica, which would be kind of nice to work on that. But so it's great. But what I did to first just get everything out there is I just said, here it is for free. Okay, just let me see. This was 2018, and I have no free. I don't know. And found that all of the books had been downloaded. So I was like, okay, there is a market there. I subsequently gone back and increased, price here and there. Um, but I'm having to learn that. I actually have hired someone to actually do social media for me to help promote the books. Um, because I'm 57 years old. Technology and me are not always the best of friends. And all that time I spent in the military was a very, don't have a social media platform, don't have a, it was just what they told us, and I just got used to it. And now I'm out like, oh, well, there's Instagram, Facebook, and all sorts of things. So uh, I've hired somebody to help me out with that. Also, Barnes and Noble. I'm going to do a book signing at Barnes and Noble. So those of you that are out there, Barnes and Noble is really good. Check their website; they'll tell you kind of how to do it. Find a place you want to go. They will. They'll advertise, "Hey, you're coming to sign," but they also expect you to, reciprocate and put out your social media. Hey, I'm doing this book signing because it's I would say transactional, but it works, right? Hey, they're going to promote you. People are going to come to the store. Hopefully, they'll buy your book. Hopefully, they'll buy some other books. But Barnes and Noble is a really good um, avenue, and that's going to be kind of my next thing to go.
Well, that's huge. I mean, Barnes and Noble, I didn't even know that they would invite self-published authors
Oh
into
yeah,
the store to do a signing. You found that on the website?
yes. Because the thing is, and this is something I found out. There was a it was a gentleman, and look, I appreciate every writer. I do. Right. I respect everybody who writes. I don't care if you write a paragraph or you write, you know, a tome. It does. I have respect for that. But there's this individual that I met who's at Walmart, and he was talking about, well, I spent X amount of dollars, and they got me into Walmart, and they got me here. So I did some research. I bought the book to find out, okay, who is he publishing through, and come to find out that that is one of those places that give us money and we can get you anywhere. Or actually, if you do it yourself, you're okay. Because one of the things they mentioned was, well, I'm in Barnes and Noble. I'm in Barnes and Noble too. Also, excuse me. All you have to do is go up to the information desk and say, I'm looking for JW Orchard books. Okay, which one? And I one, and they'll order it for you. They'll be more than happy to order it for you off of Amazon. Barnes and Noble will have you come in. And they have a procedure, right? Don't walk in hair all scruffy like you're a writer and, oh, hey, I write books. Go in and you make contact. They have a media person you make contact with, and they set it up from there. So that's my next step. I've been waiting for this interview because this actually kicks off a new learning for me, doing podcasts and advertising books and so on and so forth. And the other thing too is I'll occasionally from time to time just give it away for free here. If you enjoy the book, great. Please buy another one. Does it work? Yeah. Um,
It's a way to get people hooked on your work and be
yeah.
a cost leader, and be able to say the first one's free and here's the rest of the series.
I know this is going to sound odd, but the idea that came from was a term called Jesus marketing, and I was like, what? Yeah, well, Jesus did miracles kind of for free, and then I was like, oh, that's kind of a smart idea. Um, and that's the thing. My goal is is to write a good story. And if I can write a good story, then there'll be proceeds from that. And I think that is one of the things that I strive to do is take classes. And from Writers League of Texas, and I'm on YouTube, and there's lots of noise on YouTube, but there's some really good things out there. Will Jordan is a writer who I've read his stuff, and actually I learned it's really interesting when I started writing because I didn't know and had no idea. And I'm putting stuff, words on paper, and came across he had a YouTube thing about this is what the story looks like, and this I was like, well, that's interesting, and found a class, and it was actually on screenwriting, right? But I was so desperate, I don't know. The guy that taught me to write, I don't know where he's at. I don't even. And I went to this class, and they laid out, okay, this is basic, and I was like, oh, that's great, you know. And that's the thing I strive to do is to constantly learn, you know. So, um, don't believe your own press because people are like, oh, the story's great. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I hope you enjoyed it. And it's one of those. There's a bit of pride that goes, wow, I actually wrote something and people enjoy it.
Yeah.
And then there's the be humble. So yeah.
Well, I've always heard that if you write a good story, it will find its audience. And I think your work is finding its audience. Are you a morning person or a night person? Do you write every day?
Uh yes, that question. I'm getting better at writing every day. Uh, there's times it depends on what I'm writing. Um, I have a scene coming, and I call them scenes. I have a scene in my head, and I will write until that scene is done. The problem is that scene will of course birth other scenes to go along with it. So I do try to write every day. In fact, some advice from the last class I took with the Writers League was, you should try to write 20 minutes every day. It's like, okay, well, that's good. Um, so I either write or I'm doing research for whatever. Because this, when I write a story, I want it to be semi-believable. You know what I mean? And so when I wrote the Out of Purgatory series, one of the Easter eggs is if a character says, "Well, look it up. It's on the internet." You can look it up on the internet, and so there's that much research for that many lines. But yeah, write every day. Write or be writing every day.
I interviewed someone who says she has a journal that she writes in every day. If it's only one sentence, it's a one sentence journal. And I thought, well, surely all of us could write one sentence every single day, and that might inspire us to write more if we like that sentence.
I do agree with that. And sometimes that's all you write, and life does go on. If granted, if I got paid for this, this is all I do. Um, but it, the that's it. Writing is the key thing. That is the biggest thing is to write. People get afraid, or I don't know if anybody will like it, or just write. Right. You'd be surprised. I mean, there's some stuff I've written. I'm going, this is terrible. And people are like, oh, this is great. And I'm like, okay,
Well,
keep
we're
writing.
we're our own worst critics for sure. JW, why don't you tell us a little bit about the book that you've brought to share with us today and then read from it so that we can hear your tone and voice in the book?
All right. Well, thank you very much. It won't be the firefight. This is uh, like I said, this is the autobiography. It's more, I've written, it's called Out of Purgatory. It's actually a series. So if you're Catholic and familiar with the rites of funerals, Out of Purgatory, right? There's the Divine Liturgy, and then there's the Requiem Mass. So those are the three books. But premise Which being is that some doctors, while having a grant to weigh a soul, which actually in 1909 somebody tried to do that, they discover reincarnation and that it's real, and they commercialize it. So it's about this family, or this, these three people that go through these different lives and how they interact, and is it human nature that makes you do it, or there's something. And one of the things that is mentioned, and that's not what I'll be reading, but it says, I said, because I thought about this, have you ever walked into a room and instantly like somebody? Have you instantly not like them? And I thought, what if you met them in a different life, and this is why? And the other reason was, my mother died when I was very young, and I always thought what it would be like to meet her as an adult, to have a conversation with her, right? So, sounds odd, but this is kind of the beginning. It says, Aaron looked at her and said, everyone needs to know that they are loved and have worth. What you do after this moment is up to you. Forget me not. He looked at her, squeezed her hand, and breathed his last. At the same moment, she felt her abdomen contract. She pulled back her hand from his, and there was a sudden static electric spark from his hand to hers. She stumbled back and passed out in the observation chair. So,
and so it begins.
So it does. And it's it was a fun series to write. I do want to do another follow-on, not so much to the series, but a separate historical fiction where I bring back Julius Caesar and Napoleon and Alexander the Great and all of these leaders from history all at the same time. And how will these egos clash, right? And to be able to give some history and just kind of that interplay. And of course, Cleopatra will be there, and Catherine the Great and Queen Elizabeth the First, and it's it'll be fun. It'll be an interesting thing to see what happens.
Does your family support your career as a writer?
Oh God, my wife is a saint. Actually, so setting all of this up, this where we're at, we had just come back from vacation, and I knew this was coming, and I was like, well, I need to get this set up. So she's actually helped me set up this studio, so to speak, that we're in. Actually helped me today, and I love her to death. But God, yeah, she supports my stuff. She reads. She's read every one of my books. The funny thing is, she doesn't read the genre that I write normally. Okay. But she does read them. So she's the first to read them, and she'll tell me if it's good or bad or whatever. And I trust her critiques.
Yeah.
So yes.
It's so great to have someone who does support you and who does read your work, because a piece of you is in that work. So they love you. They want to read what you've written.
Yes. And also when I tell her, well, I have to spend some money on buying product because you do have to have some physical books. She's very supportive, and I can say I couldn't do this without her because it'd be very difficult. But she's great. I love her to death.
What do you think the best money you've ever spent as a writer has been?
My first class. Just I'm not going to say the amount, but I told the person who taught me the class, I'm like, you got ripped off, okay? Because this is great. And actually, and I'll say this to everyone: invest in yourself, okay? Invest in the writing classes. Invest. I went to the Writers League and convention, and that was great. But I met you. I mean, and I met other authors, and I met the two gentlemen, I can't think of his name right now, who do historical fiction. So we have contact information, and so there is. I mean, yes, you get to pitch to an agent, and I'll do it again. But it was just the things to learn from other writers and other to see what people's journeys on. So definitely invest in classes that help you write. Don't. Um, I'll give you this warning: be careful of people who promise you, oh yeah, everything's fine. Just give us your money and we'll publish your book and you'll be fine and everything else. And I'm like, oh yeah. Um, invest in an editor, a line editor, somebody actually knows story, um, and Grammarly. Okay. I do have fights with Grammarly occasionally because well, don't you mean this? No, I actually meant this. But so those are tools that are available, and just like I said, invest in yourself. Classes you can go to. If you can't afford to go to classes, there's YouTube. Um, the one caveat on that is, you Google, how do I write a story, and sometimes you get somebody's video that goes on for 45 minutes that tells them why you should buy their book. Oh, and by the way, if you sign up for my class after this is over, there's lots of different different things out there. Like I said, I learned under John Truby has a book, okay, about the 28 steps of story or screenwriting. There's some definitely helpful tips in there. But yeah, anything to invest in yourself.
I
That's my
certainly agree with that. I have really been amazed, just like you said, about how many writers are making a living selling how to. And that's always been interesting to me. But I have found going to meetings, going to conferences, going to writing retreats, the most special thing about all of that is networking with our fellow writers and learning from them and sharing with them, because this is the most generous community I've ever been involved with.
Yes, and I think that's the thing. Don't be afraid. Um, it's people are like, well, aren't you worried people are going to steal my idea? Okay, first of all, real writers don't steal the writer stuff. And the people that you think are going to steal are too lazy to steal your stuff because
Yeah.
they're lazy.
Yeah.
And
And it
there's
would be a
not
whole different book if they wrote it,
right.
than
Well,
your book, even if it was the same idea. And there are lots of same ideas out here.
but there's a saying that says there are no new uh, ideas. There's just new stories,
Yeah.
and that's okay. I mean, obviously the series about reincarnation. Okay, there's bunches of things. It's just this is my twist on it. The Oceans of Fire series is, it's an action adventure, and I wrote the first book, Oceans of Fire, um, based on people I grew up with. We grew up in this very, very, very small town, and the idea was we had this kid that we met one summer, and that's it. We just met him one summer, and we never heard from him again. And then I thought, okay, well, let's look at the dynamic of how we grew up as friends and how we supported each other, and then what happened. And in the book, we have one guy. There's two commanders, right? Well, the friend ends up turning out to be an enemy who's coming after his friend, right? And that's the premise. Could you kill a friend? Well, it depends. When is a friend and when is it not? So that's an overall story arc, and there's lots of things that are involved with that. Um, and Poseidon's Hammer was based on some real life stuff about, well, okay, but what if this happens? Okay, well, I'm
I think
extrapolating
that
on this.
that is the great question, just always to ask what if, and then or you're off and running.
Well, yeah, I think that's the thing is you just sit around and go, well, what if?
Right.
Um, and I love that.
Yeah.
I, okay, we're sitting here having a podcast today, right? And I'm being interviewed for a podcast. And what if all of a sudden, okay, aliens, all right, from a different planet intercept this and they have no idea what's going on. And they now decide to pursue these two people.
Yeah.
And you know what I'm saying? There's just, you just go on
Yeah.
and on.
Yeah, it's endless, the imagination of writers. Well, JW, as always, our last interview question on authors over 50 is, do you have any advice for writers 50 and above?
Don't be afraid to write. Your story has worth. Just write. And don't worry about, well, Is it grammatically? Just put it on paper. Okay. Surround yourself with other people who want to write. All right. And reach out. I mean, if somebody has a question, I don't know, I can send you my email. If they have a question, you can email me. The worst I can say is I don't know, but you just write and don't be afraid to write and enjoy it. And don't let people go, oh, well, you're a writer. Oh, yeah. How many people do you know are writers? And enjoy it. And invest in yourself. Go to classes or ask questions and enjoy it.
I think that's great advice, and I just appreciate you being with us today. And we're happy to say that you're now one of our authors over 50.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us today. Please look for Authors Over 50 every Thursday when we will have conversations with accomplished debut novelists over the age of 50. Please subscribe and share with a friend. And check out my own publication journey after 50 at www.juliadaily, that's DAILY, like dailynewspaper.com. Until next time, keep reading and writing. And remember, it's never too late to fulfill a dream in life's sweetest third.